Hey everyone, I'm Charlie,
I'm Alan.
and we're here from Pragmatic Studio, and we're going to be talking to you today about synchronous versus asynchronous meetings. So, why did this conversation come about, Alan?
It's been a discussion between the two of us a couple of times, and especially when we were talking about the way we've worked before. Both of us have experience in freelance and have been working freelance for numerous years. And one of the kind of points of debate we had was whether or not you should sync weekly with a client, or, for example, I sometimes even sync twice a week with a client. And for me, it worked for when I was managing like two clients at one time, for example, because I had been in some asynchronous places, scenarios before where I found it like hard to connect with clients and stuff like that. But I do have to say that over time, having two meetings a week with one particular client and what the content of those meetings became really did make me start to question what the point of it was.
Right.
What was helpful in the long term was that I established these like great relationships with my clients. We would catch up, we'd say, "Hey, how's it going?" But at the end of the day, the conversations we'd be having would be, "This is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did. Here, see what I did, this is what I did the next hour, this is what I did the other hour. You see I did work."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think you've had a different experience. Like,
yeah.
you've kind of gone more down the async rabbit hole. I'd like to hear like what generally your experience has been with it.
Yeah, I think the big difference is, you've been doing design sort of as your primary job
Yeah,
for your career.
yeah,
And I think for me, there was a stint after design school, funnily enough, where I didn't work as a designer. I was doing a lot more managerial stuff and strategic stuff, not even at a design level, really just like organization wide. And so as
yeah,
a result, I was in a lot of meetings. We worked in that place together.
yeah,
And like that was where I really felt like this is not a sustainable working activity. I mean, generally speaking, I feel like the war in meetings is pretty popular these days. Everyone can kind of
yeah,
agree that no one wants to have many meetings. But when I tell you, like, we were sometimes having upwards of 12 meetings a week,
wow,
it's really like that gets you to a point where you're beginning to have heart palpitations before walking into the office because you're like, okay, if someone doesn't say something useful in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to punch them square in the face. you know and it's like, okay, how do we make this work? And I think async was very hard to change from a broad culture. But then
yeah,
after I worked there, I went to a bunch of startups where I tried to start and bring in some async logic to everything, and creating processes where I would use a tool like Notion, or just
yeah,
send like daily written updates on Slack with a Loom video showing my work. And that's when I start to see like, okay, I mean, I still feel kind of connected. These people are still commenting on stuff. They feel like I'm doing work, and they're not getting that anxiety of when's my work going to be delivered.
yeah.
And then I went freelance and I continued that, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty great. Like, it's kind of awesome to have that with the client as well, because I think that's one thing that is sometimes missing from this conversation. If anyone is on LinkedIn, you'll see the war on meetings. Oh, people are bragging about how few meetings they have these days. But when you're in a service context like we are, yeah, you have your company culture, but then you have your client's company's culture, and that's a whole other can of worms, right? That's like,
I think that's an interesting point. Also, I think like one of the things that could be interesting to talk about is when we started Pragmatics, kind of moving towards async because it was something I was less familiar with. It was something I wanted to experiment with more to see like, okay, well, how does this actually work in practice?
right,
And one of the things I noticed was setting it up this way. I started to realize like really how useless certain meetings are.
right, right.
Especially when it comes to keeping your client up to date with the work that's kind of going on. There's a lot of ways that you can do that that are a lot more practical. and don't require you to schedule a meeting between, maybe sometimes 3, 4 people who might have, other meetings going on, or kind of other schedules. It's just a lot to manage to kind of get done.
Yeah,
And you save a lot of time, but also there's like a whole history. You have a change log.
exactly.
You have a history, a documented history of the work that's been done, the changes that have been made, the questions that have been asked. And it can be this really rich resources for clients who know how to use it properly. And I
Right,
think that's kind of where we get into the conversation of like, okay, well, we're not in control, right? We're a service company. We work with
right.
our clients to make sure that they're happy and that their products are actually having an impact.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think like it's what gets lost in this conversation a lot is it's rare that your company is going to be just one or just the other, unless you're like one of those extreme. There are companies like, I think, Automatic, the company that makes WordPress, I think they don't have meetings. They I remember I was listening to a podcast with the CEO there, and he was saying how what they do is they write these like 2 to 3 page documents when it's like a strategic level like conversation they want to have, and then they give each other a week to like go and comment on it with like long thoughtful paragraphs. It's almost like sending letters to each other is almost what it's like.
Wow.
And I was like, like that can really work for, I mean, I feel like I could find a way to thrive in that environment because I love writing. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, I think he even did mention, I need to go back to the podcast, but I think he did mention that there gets a point where it like you send a few back and forth, but if there's clearly like someone's not understanding the other person, that's when you have the meeting.
Yeah.
But for them, it's almost like the meeting is like so much a last resort that like they've effectively eliminated most of them.
Totally.
And I feel like when people say let's not have meetings, everyone imagines that. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's what most companies need, right? Most companies just need to figure out what's an update versus what's a generative meeting. Because I feel like that's the big difference, right? It's like,
Yeah.
are we just telling each other about shit that happened? In which case,
Yeah.
why are we meeting? This is this
Yeah.
is this is it's factual information. Like I just need to send you a bulleted list, maybe a pre-recorded video of what's been done, and you just need to tell
Yeah.
me, yep, or point out if anything's missing.
Yeah.
Or if you want to have a meeting to like give me some critique on the design we've done, then that's good. But then at least that meeting is just the critique. And we
Yeah.
don't have to go through the, 15 minutes or whatever of like opening up Figma, moving your mouse around. Because I don't know what it is about recording a video and sending it. It's faster. You never
Yeah.
spend 10 minutes on like a Loom pre-recorded video
No.
explaining your file. It's 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 7.
Totally. I think that's another interesting thing is, when you send these videos to clients, there's two different types of clients, I think, in a way. There's a client that wants a pair of hands,
Right.
that you're hired as a support to just kind of get it done and make sure you're getting it done. And I want to tell you what to do and have you do it and kind of not worry about it. And then there's a client where they just they hire you as sort of more of, I guess, an expert leading certain things or have these thoughtful recommendations about how to do things. And depending on what kind of camp your client falls into, I think it really changes the dynamic. When you have a project that you can kind of lead the design, where you say, okay, look here, I'm going to create a portal for you where you can see the updates on a weekly basis, or whatever. I mean, there's different ways you can integrate that type of thing into context. But either way, it's just like a place where design lives, is being updated, is alive and productive, versus as a client, I'm feeling a pain and an anxiety, and I just need you to do what I kind of tell you to do, which I completely understand as well. Like sometimes, especially when hiring, people hire when they're at a moment of anxiety or a moment of I need something fixed. Please just fix it for me. It's like a plumber or like a mechanic. The thing isn't working. Make it work. Give me updates on how it's working, and just that's it. I don't require any more of you. I don't need you to soup up the car or come up with a detailed schematic of how this could be improved in the long term. So yeah, it definitely changes a lot. Yeah. And that's one of the toughest things. Is
Yeah.
figure out a standardized way of doing things.
Yeah, and I mean, it becomes easier. I think the more established we get to kind of come
Yeah.
in with our process, because people will have more trust. If we have 5 years on our belt and we come in and we go like, here's how we do things. I feel people take that in a very different way compared to like, hey, we're this like new company and we're trying this thing that you may have never experienced before.
Totally.
Please trust us on this journey. And I do think definitely a benefit of meeting is the social aspect, right? Like definitely
Yeah.
you get to know them, and especially with clients where you might not be around them for a very long amount of time, maybe 2 months.
Yeah.
If you in 2 months you're not gonna really build connections if you're not having some kind of face-to-face time.
Yeah.
But then there's also a question like, is that what we're here for? Are we here to make friends? Are we here to like deliver work? I mean, yeah, that's maybe another conversation. But more
Totally.
more than that, I think that tends to be the biggest thing with meetings is it feels better. There's also the perception that it's faster. I'm saying perception, and I think that it is faster for things that are highly complicated and generative. So
Yeah.
brainstorms, things like that. But it's if you do the math in a certain way, you can also see how it's slower.
Yeah.
For example, if there's 6 of us in an update meeting where only one person is presenting, that's actually quite a bit slower
Yeah.
because you're kind of forcing everyone to coordinate a schedule as opposed to, let's say I'm the one presenting, me recording a 4-minute video and then each person watching the 4-minute video on their own time. The other benefit of a meeting is it's good for like openings and closures. It's good for like a kickoff,
Yes. Totally.
and it's good for like are we done? And obviously you're never going to like hire someone without a meeting. You're obviously never going to like take a client without a meeting. Like there are these things where it's like you need to know
Yeah.
who the person is.
Another one is I think when, like, for example, I hate when I'm having a conversation on Slack or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Via email, and it's okay. I've asked the question once. I got a semi-answer. I asked the question a second time. I got a semi-answer.
Yeah.
I asked the question a third time. Now maybe we should just clarify this quickly.
Right.
And have a quick sync, and then we can just move on with our lives.
Yeah.
You have information that I need. Maybe I'm not asking the question correctly. Let's resolve this quickly, and then I can move on.
Definitely, yeah.
Blocked.
Definitely. I mean, meetings are for unblocking, and I think when they're very powerful tools, right? It's just, again, do you think it's blocked or not you, but like in a situation, right? Asynchronous requires you to become really good at writing. And not everyone is really good at writing. So in the case you just gave, maybe your question was written poorly, right? Or, which is more common, I think, is people don't really want to invest the time in like stopping and thinking and writing a really carefully crafted answer. They're just like, "Bleh," and it's like, okay, hey, like I didn't understand that. Can you take a second to like think about this? And then I've actually been in situations where I will sort of kindly request something like that. And then the person's like, it's just quicker if we get on a call. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they get on a call, their thoughts are not fleshed out, and they're fleshing their thoughts out while I'm there live.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't acknowledge as a giant time suck in meetings is, hey, I have an idea. Can we get on a call so I can discuss it with you? Well, okay. We get on the call. It's like, so I was thinking about this thing. And, maybe, it's okay, you're clearly like spitballing on the spot here. So why are you wasting my time? Like, why aren't you just like thinking about it first and then delivering it to me? And again, we're not talking about like, oh, we're friends and we want to like brainstorm a business. We're talking like colleagues where it's like a professional relationship and, it's a very specific thing. Let's say for a checkout flow and they have an idea for a checkout flow. Think about it first, man. And that's what async forces you to do, which is actually, to me, a benefit. People think of that as a con because now I have to spend 20 minutes preparing before I send you a message.
Yeah.
But that's actually a good thing. Your idea is clearer to you. It's clearer to me. And I can read it, think about it, and then ask thoughtful questions. As opposed to in a 30-minute meeting, taking 15 minutes to figure out what you're saying. Me having 5 minutes to react. And then like throwing it back at you, which is like so fast.
Yeah.
For something deep, you can't do that. Yeah, color of a button, fine.
Yeah.
But like, should we kill our checkout flow? Like,
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Like for me, one of the biggest challenges and kind of most exciting bits is to say, okay, there's a need, there's a understandable desire for meetings. How can we understand that desire and make them understand that there are alternatives that will satisfy that fear or
Right.
anxiety that they're feeling? And that's where I think we're still figuring it out. Like one of the things that I remember discussing was like, okay, what about a specific time that you send the sync? What about, a kind of update schedule so that they know when things are coming?
Right.
And as that happens, all of a sudden, like, okay, all this anxiety that I was having, at least I have a clear idea of when I'm getting updates at what time and when feedback is expected.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's a tough thing to figure out, honestly. And I think we're in the process of building that.
Yeah.
We're using a bunch of different things. I think you can talk a little bit about the tools we're using more because it's kind of your tech stack that we've adopted a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like it's the standard thing that I always start with is video because video is super powerful. So that's Loom,
Yeah,
and Loom is got a pretty decent free plan. So that's a tool plugs into your browser or your desktop, and one click, video starts recording screen and your face, which I think is quite powerful.
yeah,
And the minute the video is done recording, it's automatically already uploaded. I don't know
yeah,
what kind of magic they're doing behind the scenes. And they paste, like they copy the link onto your clipboard. So really, when you're done recording a Loom, all you have to do is go somewhere and hit paste, and
yeah,
bam, it's there. So that's always where I start, and then I build things around that, right? So how can we have a log of all the looms? That's where like that Notion change log comes in, or any kind of document. And I've always loved change logs. I think it's a nerdy thing. Whenever an app updates, I'm always reading the change log. I'm like, oh, what's the new thing here? And I like to make it feel like our business is that. Like so, then instead of
yeah,
emails and threads being all over the place, big date, video, and then details. And then every
yeah,
new update, push everything down and put the latest thing on top. So that way,
yeah,
when the client opens the link to the Notion page or the ClickUp page, honestly, this can probably even work in a Google Doc. First thing they see is the latest thing, and that's it. And you have a
yeah,
date there, which is super transparent. The Loom itself has a date, so you can't lie.
yeah,
And if you're good about writing bullets of details and some questions, honestly, the systems work for me very well. I've even,
yeah,
in some cases, the client will come to me like, hey, I haven't seen what's going on here. And I'm like, oh, actually, it's this thing. And then they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'll check that again next time. And then it's like, cool,
yeah.
that's it.
At the end of the day, I love talking to people. You love talking to people. It's not that we don't want to have meetings. Like meetings are fundamental. We work with clients. We started this business specifically to work with clients that we like would love to build a relationship with.
Exactly,
Like people who are
exactly.
working in spaces that are super interesting.
I guess what I've come to realize is meetings, if it's about, like, if we say that meetings are supposed to be social and
Yeah,
they're helping build relationships, then let's have relationship building meetings.
totally.
Let's
I love
not
that.
let's not blend. Let's find a way to get like, hey, can we get on a 15-minute coffee chat? You know,
Yeah,
we can kind of loosely talk about work, but like primarily it's like, how are you feeling? How are things going? So I think that's one really useful case in meetings. I think the other is, yeah, that like once you get to a point where you're stuck. Third is like kickoffs and closings,
yeah,
right? Let's close the project. Let's kick off the project. Meetings are
yeah,
still pretty nice for that, right? And I feel like honestly, everything else is async.
yeah.
And even when you have those meetings, come with an agenda. Know what you want to say,
Totally.
and know what you want to ask. And it's like, then yeah, then it's really good. And if you can, send the agenda in advance.
Yeah,
But hey, like I think everyone's starting to figure this out now. I think there were a few
yeah,
radical companies, Automatic Buffer was one. I think there are companies like Bandcamp, Basecamp, and there's this like small kit of companies that was like kind of radical anti-meeting for a long time. But
yeah,
with the advent of remote everything, way more people are being introduced to this now.
yeah,
So it'll be interesting to see like kind of what comes up as tooling evolves, as culture and tolerances evolve and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think that's it, man. I think
Yeah, that's it.
that's all we can say. But well, it's probably not. We could probably say way more about that. But I think that's all we should say about that for now.
Totally.
So thanks you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen or watch. And we'll see you next week. Peace. Anyway,
dense ass hair.
I have dense hair, yeah.